to prevent the decaying skin from falling off. The man wrapped his body in plastic wrap. He took out a bottle of expired foundation and applied it to his face. After carefully blending it with a brush, Vergara put on a hat and sprayed some perfume, but when he finished his makeup and walked out of the bathroom, a large number of bread bugs were scattered on the floor. At the same time, the passengers in the cabin also smelled the strong stench of decay. Fabio secretly took the man's belongings next to him. He tried to use them to cover his rotting body. However, bugs continuously fell from the pant legs. The reason they looked this way started with a mysterious silver coin. Many years ago, Jesus was betrayed by his disciple Judas. Roman soldiers nailed him to the cross and tortured him to death. Judas received 30 silver coins as a result, but he regretted witnessing the entire event. So, he chose to hang himself. The 30 silver coins scattered across the world, and it is said that if someone gathers all of them, they will gain supreme power. Meanwhile, strange things were also happening on a farm. Veterinarian Elena was helping a cow give birth when a baby boy unexpectedly popped out of the cow's belly. The scene shocked everyone around. Upon hearing the news, Paco rushed over. He first ordered everyone to keep the information confidential and then took Elena to find Vergara. Such a bizarre event was hard for Vergara to believe as well. They reviewed the footage of the birth and noticed a suspicious homeless man. It was possible that he swapped the calf with the baby boy when Elena wasn't paying attention. So, the group went to the homeless man's dwelling. Just as they were carefully searching for clues, the church bells rang. At that moment, the homeless man was standing on the rooftop, holding the baby boy, and chanting some kind of incantation. When Vergara and the others climbed up to persuade him, he not only held the baby boy in the air but also claimed that the child was the reincarnation of the devil. Fortunately, Elena spoke up in time to stop him. After some persuasive words, they successfully saved the baby boy, but the homeless man suddenly turned to Vergara and said something strange, stating that everything he did was because of Vergara, and only this way would God forgive Vergara. Elena handed the saved baby boy to the farm owner for safekeeping, and then she went to the homeless man's side. On the ground, Elena found a silver coin, and the homeless man was also carrying a Bible. But how could he have these things when he couldn't even read? Paco suspected someone was manipulating everything behind the scenes. Based on what the homeless man said before jumping, they focused their suspicion on Vergara. Sure enough, their investigation revealed that Vergara was not only an exorcist but also responsible for the death of a child. The next morning, Elena found Vergara and shared the information with him. After hearing this, Vergara didn't deny it and directly admitted his crime. It turned out that he had been invited to perform an exorcism on a boy. However, the exorcism didn't go smoothly. Holy water and the cross had no effect on the boy. Just when he didn't know what to do, the boy squeezed out a silver coin from his arm. At the time, Vergara didn't know the coin's significance, but after the boy took it out, he lost his life. Everyone present believed that Vergara had killed the boy, which led him to adopt a hidden identity and come to this place. He didn't explain the coin's power, only telling Elena that it was a simple piece of metal. Before leaving, Vergara even gave it to her, but what Elena never expected was that this silver coin would bring drastic changes to her life. Just as Elena was about to drive away, the farm owner suddenly appeared and stopped her, inviting her to visit the baby boy at his house. When she saw the scene before her, Elena was shocked and stood still. Only 2 days had passed since then. The baby boy had already learned to walk, and his height had grown to 1.7 meters. Realizing something was wrong, the man tried to send him to an orphanage. However, the wife believed he was trying to take the child from her, so she secretly killed him with a steel needle. Afterward, the woman not only didn't feel sad but calmly made breakfast for the child. Fresh liver and milk were mixed together, and soon a high-protein drink was prepared. On the other side, Elena had already found Paco and told him about the baby boy growing up so quickly. The two drove to the farm owner's house, but by then, the house had been covered with chaotic spider webs, and inside, there hung a large cocoon, which contained the dead man. As they were about to go upstairs to investigate, Maria suddenly appeared in front of them. The woman stabbed Paco, and he struggled down the stairs, trying to run outside, but the injured Paco was quickly grabbed by the hair by Maria. Realizing he was no match for her, Elena had no choice but to leave and seek help. On her way to escape, she ran into Vergara and the officers. After hearing the news, they immediately called for backup. By this time, Paco had been wrapped up like a cocoon and hung up, while Maria happily showed off the toy in her hands. Every time she moved, the upper floor made a thumping noise. Soon, Vergara and the officers arrived. Looking at the house covered in spider webs, Vergara, as an exorcist, was also somewhat in disbelief. Maria calmly walked up to him. Seeing this, Vergara deliberately started a conversation with her. At the same time, an officer quietly circled around to Maria's back, but to their surprise, she had already noticed everything and immediately knocked the officer flying. She then turned and attacked Vergara, as if possessed by an evil spirit, demanding the silver coin. During their struggle, an officer tried to intervene with a gun, but by then, Maria had completely lost her self-awareness. She coldly stared at the officer with the gun. As the officer got closer, he had no choice but to fire several shots, knocking her to the ground. Soon, an ambulance arrived at the scene, and they took Paco and Maria onto the vehicle. Elena went upstairs to search for the baby boy, but the baby's room was already empty, with only a human skin shed on the floor. At the same time, the deceased Maria suddenly sat up. She slowly took out a toy from her bag and whispered into its head. Soon, a spider-like creature appeared on the road, and the ambulance lost balance, overturning, with the screeching sounds drawing near. The car door was thrown off. Maria followed her spider child away. Meanwhile, Vergara brought Elena to the church, knowing that Maria would surely come looking for him again. He opened the long-sealed hidden room, where guns and ammunition were everywhere. Just as Vergara was preparing, the sound of a window breaking came from outside. He instructed Elena to hide in the hidden room while he went outside to investigate. An invisible force shook the chairs inside the church. When the old woman discovered Vergara, she immediately knocked him unconscious. Hearing the noise, Elena ran out of the hidden room, but Maria struck her down immediately. Seeing this, Elena had no choice but to hide back in the prayer room, where Maria demanded the silver coin. Elena took out the coin, and Maria, in a frenzy, grabbed Elena. Just as Elena was about to be taken, Vergara, who had regained consciousness, managed to pull Maria away. He went to the holy water and baptized the bullets, for only this way could he kill the evil inside Maria. Seeing that Maria still wanted to control the spider monster, Vergara raised his gun and pulled the trigger, shooting her. Afterward, Vergara carried Maria's corpse away from there. Here's the translation using American English grammar and spacing. Hiding in the prayer room, Elena's eyes were wide open in fear. Before she could take a breath, the spider monster picked up her scent and approached. It had now evolved into a creature from a nightmare. Elena held her nose and mouth, not daring to make a sound, but the spider monster, with its keen sense of smell, found her position. In panic, Elena dialed Paco's number. Upon learning she was trapped by a monster in the church, Paco quickly shared his discovery. He told her that the toy Maria was holding was the monster's weakness. Destroying it would drive the monster away. Hearing this, Elena immediately ran out of the prayer room. Through the mirror, she saw a book, but when she turned to look behind her, there was nothing there in reality. Confused by this sight, Elena took a picture of the book's title with her phone. Looking it up on her computer, she found out that the book was called The Gospel of Judas, containing accounts of Jesus' life. Once again, this event was connected to the church, so they had no choice but to call Vergara for help. Faced with this bizarre phenomenon, Vergara was skeptical at first. He drew a mark on the table with his finger, and the same scene appeared in the mirror. But strangely, the door in the mirror was open, while in reality, it was still closed. Vergara stepped forward to test his theory. Sure enough, only his hand moved in the mirror, while the door itself remained still. It appeared that there might be another world inside the mirror. To uncover the truth, Vergara decided to stay there overnight for an investigation. He sent Elena and Paco away, but Paco had already installed a camera in the room. They could watch Vergara's every move from their phones. At that moment, Vergara sat with a crucifix in front of the mirror, seemingly aware of something he needed to confirm. Soon, it was midnight, and Vergara, overcome by sleepiness, gradually drifted off. Then, his reflection in the mirror suddenly stood up. Watching the sleeping Vergara outside, the shadow in the mirror smiled eerily. The next morning, Elena and Paco arrived. Paco showed Vergara the footage from last night. Seeing his mirror image standing up, Vergara's expression turned to horror. He raised a hammer, intending to shatter the mirror and investigate further, but just then, the shadow approached him, asking to speak privately. Elena and Paco had no choice but to step outside for a while. When they tried to view the situation through the cameras, they realized that Vergara had destroyed all of them. He didn't want anyone overhearing their conversation. Just as Vergara raised the hammer to end it all, The shadow mentioned a name and then pushed a dried corpse into the room. The corpse demanded an apology from Vergara, and as Vergara expressed his regret, it grabbed him and pulled him into the mirror world. The shadow calmly walked out. When Elena and Paco burst into the room, the shattered mirror had already returned to its original state. They had no idea that the person in front of them was the shadow from the mirror. Vergara took them to the church and shared a secret he'd never revealed before. It turned out that centuries ago, a group called the Kite existed. They believed that committing all forms of evil would lead them closer to God, making them adversaries of Jesus. Over the years, they destroyed many of Jesus' relics, as these items possessed powers to protect humanity. The most powerful of these was the 30 silver coins left by Judas. If the Kite gathered all the coins, they could easily wipe out Christianity. Elena happened to possess one of these coins, and to prevent it from falling into the Kite's hands, Vergara suggested that she hand it over to him for safekeeping. However, his gaze made Elena suspicious. Sensing something was off, she didn't directly refuse but instead used the excuse of going home to get the coin and quickly left. But as soon as she obtained the coin and was about to destroy it, Vergara arrived with Paco. Although Elena had her suspicions, she couldn't be certain of his identity. Just as she was about to hand over the coin, she noticed that Vergara's watch was mirrored, instantly revealing his true identity. Elena quickly shoved Vergara aside and ran into the house. Looking out the window, she saw the shadow pretending to be Vergara disappear. Now that it had left the mirror, the real Vergara must be trapped inside. They quickly returned to the mirror, though they had no idea how to enter it. Elena reached out to touch the spot in the mirror where the book was, and to her surprise, she was able to pick it up. With a swift move, she smashed the book into the mirror, shattering it. Inside was a parallel world, mirroring reality almost exactly. They crossed through the room and arrived in a grand palace, with 4 mirrors on the wall, each connected to different locations. At that moment, a group of cardinals in red robes was gathered in a room, holding a meeting. In the center, a man in black, hooded and bound, stood. The lead cardinal took a dagger, kissed it lightly, and passed it down for blessing. After each person's saliva touched it, an assistant pulled off the hood of the man in black. It was Vergara, who had been captured. Elena and Paco witnessed the scene from outside. Each cardinal took out a pendant from their pockets, each containing a silver coin they had collected. When Vergara refused to reveal the location of the remaining coins, the lead cardinal signaled his assistant to proceed. Seeing this, Elena quickly pressed her coin against the mirror, drawing everyone's attention, allowing Vergara to push his assistant away and escape. Paco carried the injured Vergara as they fled outside, passing through the luxurious palace into the mirror world. After successfully returning to reality through the broken mirror, the mirror world became a wooden wall. Following this experience, Elena finally realized the terrifying power of the silver coin. So, she drove to a bridge and threw the coin into the river. But it wasn't going to be that simple. Judas's coin wasn't something that could be discarded so easily. An old woman secretly lifted the scarecrow's clothes and pulled out a wallet from inside. Looking at the photo of the happy couple, she showed an eerie smile. Then, the old woman poured water on the ground, and before long, the scarecrow's body began to transform. The dry twigs were covered with an energy, and the woven hands soon grew human skin. The next morning, the scarecrow had turned into a living human, covered in dry soil. He ignored the strange glances from those around him. When he got home, he brushed off the dust on his body. Meanwhile, Elena was preparing to go out with her new boyfriend. Just as they were waiting to check in, Paco suddenly arrived with others. It turned out that the man was Elena's husband, but her husband had disappeared years ago. How could he suddenly reappear? With Paco's company, they went to the police station. Upon seeing the man's face, Elena was equally shocked. She couldn't believe that he was really her husband she'd been searching for all these years. The man's return excited Elena, and she didn't notice an old woman watching them. When they got home, they quickly reconnected, and Elena, who had been desolate for so long, finally found comfort. But what she didn't know was that the person interacting with her was actually the old woman outside. News of the man's return quickly spread through the town, but a hunter showed a look of horror when he heard. To confirm the news, the hunter went directly to see Elena and her husband. When he saw the man's face, he was instantly paralyzed with fear. It seemed he knew something about the man, and that night, the hunter broke into Elena's home. He didn't hesitate to fire a shot at the bed. Arriving officers quickly intervened, but the hunter attempted to raise his gun in resistance. The officers had no choice but to shoot him in the arm. Calming down, the hunter finally revealed the truth. The hunter said he had personally killed the man, so there was no way he could be alive. To verify the hunter's claim, Paco took officers to the burial site, where they did find a skull. Meanwhile, Elena and her husband were on their way home. As she sat in the car, imagining a beautiful future, during their conversation, the man suddenly mentioned the coin, saying she should have handed it to those people. Although her husband's words puzzled Elena, she still told him about throwing the coin into the river. Hearing this, the man's demeanor changed instantly, and he slapped Elena across the face. Then he pushed her head against the car window. In that moment, Elena finally realized this man wasn't her husband. She reached out, trying to grab the steering wheel, and during the struggle, the car lost control and veered into a ditch. The Scarecrow man wasn't severely hurt. He carried the unconscious Elena to a nearby gas station, where a car was fueling up. Seeing this, the man quickly knocked the driver out with a few punches, then grabbed the fuel nozzle and forced it down the driver's throat, then drove away. On the road, Elena regained consciousness and secretly messaged Paco. After receiving her location, Paco led officers to take action. By this time, the man had taken Elena to the bridge where she had thrown the coin. He lifted Elena over the rail, ready to jump down to search. At the critical moment, Paco and his team arrived and pulled Elena back. The man was left dangling in midair. Seeing this, Elena stomped on his head furiously. After dozens of heavy hits, the man's body crumbled into dust, falling into the water. A 10-year-old salted fish was fished from the sea by a worker. Through transport, it reached a high-end restaurant, and as the chef prepared it in front of the guests, a silver coin fell from its belly. The man saw it and claimed the coin, which was the same one Elena had discarded. Unaware of its history, he thought it was fate. The next day, he wrapped it as a gift and gave it to Elena. She thought he was proposing, but as soon as she saw the coin inside, she jumped up in shock. She remembered that the Scarecrow had warned her that the coin would return, and she hadn't expected that day to come so soon. Panicked, Elena ran into the bathroom and told Paco about the coin's return. While they were on the phone, an old man wearing a necklace entered the restaurant. Without a word, he shot Elena's husband and started searching for the coin. The security guards attempted to stop him, but the old man seemed to be immortal. He took multiple gunshots without feeling any pain and even overpowered the guards. During the struggle, a guard tore the necklace off his neck, causing the old man to lose his life and collapse. Having narrowly escaped, Elena looked back at the box and found the coin inside was missing, but the next second, the coin appeared right at her feet. Realizing there was no escaping this, Elena decided to take the coin to Vergara for help. Meanwhile, a stranger arrived in the town, claiming to be sent by the church. After hearing this, Paco's wife arranged a place for him to stay. But the next day, he secretly met with a witch and handed her a bag. The witch quickly spread the contents, some insects and black soil, around the edges of the town. By nightfall, white smoke started rising from the town's ground. At first, everyone thought it was due to pollution being released into the sewers, but as time passed, the smoke didn't dissipate at all. Only then did they realize the severity of the situation. The officers attempted to drive out for help, but they were stopped at the entrance by an invisible wall. Shortly after, Elena returned to the town with the coin. She was shocked by the scene in front of her. However, the white smoke seemed to flow only within the town, and the barrier didn't prevent people from entering. The moment Elena stepped into town, the kite sensed her presence. The witch first pretended to be injured to catch Elena's attention, then led her to where Paco was staying. Once Elena entered the room alone, they summoned Paco's wife. Seeing the two alone in bed, Paco's wife rushed in and began fighting with Elena. When Paco hurried in to intervene, the coin on Elena had already been snatched by his wife. She quickly ran outside to meet the man and handed over the coin. Meanwhile, Vergara was in his armory, gearing up. He doused all the bullets with holy water. A battle between man and demon was about to begin. Paco and Elena, who had just arrived, quickly grabbed weapons and joined him. The three of them stepped into the smoke, shouting the demon's name. In no time, the ground began to tremble, and a demon with tentacles emerged from below. It was the true form of the man, his body covered in hellish spirits. The three immediately began shooting. After a fierce fight, the the demon transformed into a human. Although they temporarily defeated the demon's main form, it was still strong in human shape. With no other choice, the three retreated into a basement. Whenever tourists visited, the demon would have the townspeople capture them and force-feed them communion in the church. Once they ate the communion, they became the demon's slaves. Now, everyone in the town had lost their sense of self, except Elena, Paco, and Vergara, hiding in the basement. To locate the demon, Vergara smashed a sacred relic he'd worshipped for years and smeared Jesus' blood on his eyes, using a dove as his eyes. With Elena and Paco's help, Vergara guided it around town in search of the demon. Soon, he found the demon's presence in the church, which the kite had turned into a slaughterhouse. They had crafted a holy robe from animal skins, intended for an upcoming coronation ceremony. After confirming the location, Vergara led the group through an underground tunnel to the church, but halfway there, Paco's wife intercepted them. She immediately engaged in a fight with Elena. Paco raised his gun to intervene, but his wife ignored him and plunged a silver needle into Elena's neck, then walked away from the town. Distraught, Paco went to find Vergara. When they returned, Elena had disappeared from the tunnel. At that moment, dozens of black cars arrived in town, each carrying Vergara lookalikes from around the world. The most prominent among them was the leader of the kite. Seeing this, the demon personally came to welcome him. They had prepared for this moment for a long time. Now that all 30 silver coins were gathered, if the leader gained their power, he would control the entire world. Meanwhile, Vergara and Paco reached the church through the tunnel and found an unconscious Elena. However, Vergara was inexplicably drawn to another room. The walls were adorned with animal heads, and the kite leader was performing a pre-ceremony ritual. Just then, the demon appeared. Vergara swung his fists, trying to fight, but his attacks were futile. The demon seized him by the neck and threw him to the ground. Once all 30 silver coins were assembled, the leader took the spear that had killed Jesus and drove it into Vergara's body. Wearing a crown, he stepped to the window, where the followers below cheered. But as the leader delivered a triumphant speech, a white dove suddenly swooped in, attacking him. At the same time, Vergara, enduring the pain, pulled the spear from his body and pushed the leader off the high ledge. The scattered coins triggered a frenzy. No one cared about the leader's fate anymore. Everyone just wanted a coin to claim its power. Soon, the followers left with the coins, one of which ended up in Paco's wife's hands. She left town with a man, holding onto the coin. The demon, seeing the two corpses on the ground, felt a mix of emotions. After years of effort gathering the coins, they were gone in mere seconds. Realizing the plan had failed, the demon transformed and left the town. Through a mirror, he arrived in the center of New York City, ready to establish his own church there. The old woman dragged the two bodies back to her room and cut a piece of skin from her own body. She wrote a spell on it with a pen and placed it in the corpse's mouth. Then, she covered the bodies completely with bread bugs, showing a mysterious smile. After an unknown amount of time, the dead Vergara woke up inside a coffin, only to find himself in a dimly lit room surrounded by cloaked figures. Filled with confusion, Vergara walked out of the room. When he saw the scene outside, he realized he was now in hell. As Vergara explored his surroundings, two monstrous creatures appeared, taking him to a grand palace. The hall was filled with demons from the depths of hell, each grotesque face staring coldly at Vergara. They were all demons mentioned in mythology. Vergara, suppressing his fear, walked through the corridor to the palace's depths, where he saw a creature with horns on its head. When the creature in a suit retracted its horns and revealed its face, Vergara recognized him as the demon who once aided the Pope. It was clear that this demon had now become the leader here, and he had summoned Vergara for a partnership. As it turned out, the demon had always supported both good and evil as needed. But now, he was facing a new threat, someone who sought not power, but the void. The void was the most terrifying thing in existence. If achieved, both the human world and hell would be destroyed. So, the demon wanted Vergara's help to stop it. Meanwhile, in the prison cells deep in hell, a group of souls waited in cages for punishment. Elena's soul was also trapped here. As monstrous guards struck the cages with chains, the sparks from the impact frightened the imprisoned souls. Just then, another monster approached, preparing to punish the souls, but Vergara arrived just in time and knocked it down. He urgently turned to Elena in the cage and said, "I'll find a way to get you out of here. When you escape, you'll have something very important. You must protect it at all costs." Before he finished speaking, more monsters surrounded Vergara, forcing him to flee upstairs. He shouted to Elena, telling her to find a certain book and warning her not to read its contents. He instructed her to find someone named Lombardi, who would know what to do. After saying this, Vergara opened the iron gate, and Elena seized the opportunity to escape, with monsters hot on her trail. In her panic, Elena ran to a balcony, but outside was a volcano flowing with molten lava. With no other choice, she ran along the balcony to another room. In this room, souls were being punished, forced to fill a basin with their own blood. As soon as Elena entered, she accidentally knocked over the blood-filled basin, sparking the wrath of all the souls. They turned toward Elena, surrounding her, while the pursuing monster caught up. Elena's resistance had no effect on the monster, which simply tossed her against a wall, leaving her powerless. Just as the demon was about to drag her back to the cage, Elena clung tightly to a nearby pillar. After what felt like a night's sleep, Elena found herself inexplicably pregnant, and within just 2 days, she showed signs of labor. Paco, seeing this, quickly called a doctor. After hours of labor, the doctor extracted a fleshy orb from Elena's belly. The orb had spider-like legs, and the spider creature soon lay motionless under the table. The next day, the doctor invited a few friends, renowned professors in the medical field. Faced with the spider-legged orb, the professors were eager to understand its nature, but as they peeled back its skin, the lifeless spider creature suddenly came to life. It leapt onto Elena, and Paco, in shock, grabbed a pen and stabbed it. The wounded spider creature scurried away, and Paco frantically stomped it to death. Once calm, Paco found a key in the spider's belly, with symbols suggesting it belonged to a specific place. After investigating, they discovered it was the crest of an academy, so the two immediately took the key and went there. Using nearby shelves, they quickly entered, reaching the library where they searched for something related to the key. Oddly, the library had miniature tracks installed, so they followed the tracks as they searched. At the end of the path, Elena discovered a hidden door. Behind the door was a narrow passage, and after navigating it, they found a chained-up box. When Elena used the key to unlock the mechanism, an ancient book emerged from the box. It was the book Vergara had mentioned. Just as they wondered about its purpose, a metallic clanging came from behind. A machine loaded with various weapons burst out from the bookshelves. The two fled, and eventually, Paco separated the machine, bringing it to a stop. After dealing with the large robot, another mechanical bird appeared, though faster than the previous robot. It was cumbersome around corners. Elena used this to her advantage, toppling a bookshelf to trap it underneath. But when they finally escaped the academy, a group of strange people appeared, trying to snatch the book from Elena. They fled to a nearby train station, where they saw a homeless man. The homeless man pretended to be injured, lying on the tracks, and compassionate Elena approached to help him, but the homeless man took the opportunity to snatch her book. Before he could reach the opposite platform, a speeding train smashed him to pieces. When Elena and Paco arrived, the dying homeless man was still clutching the book. An old woman decapitated a goat, drained its blood, and poured it into a coffin filled with bread bugs. After a while, the two corpses inside came to life, though they decomposed beyond recognition over the past year. To avoid attracting attention, the witch took them to a makeup room. Seeing their faces in the mirror left them feeling deeply disturbed. With their rotting, zombie-like skin, Fabio found an expired bottle of foundation on the table, and they began applying it, like painting a wall, to restore their decaying faces bit by bit. For wounds they couldn't cover, they used a stapler to forcibly stitch them together. Dressed in clean clothes, the two prepared to wander among the living. They had been resurrected solely because of Lombardi's death. The day before, Elena and Paco brought the book to the church. There, they met Vergara's friend, Lombardi, but as Elena prepared to hand over the book, Paco sensed something was off about these people and quickly reached out to stop Elena. What they didn't know was that the Lombardi in front of them was just a puppet. The true mastermind was on a yacht miles away. Through a clay figure on his desk, Pablo controlled the puppet to converse with them. Suspicious, Elena asked a question. She wanted Lombardi to share something about Vergara, but just as Pablo was controlling the puppet and speaking at length, he was summoned to an important meeting. He handed over control of the puppet to an assistant, who knew little about Elena and Paco. Within a few exchanges, they sensed something was wrong. The assistant, realizing this, attached a handgun to the clay figure. He threatened them to hand over the book, but in his nervousness, he accidentally broke the clay figure's arm, causing Lombardi's arm to break too. Taking advantage of the moment, Paco lunged forward, grabbed Lombardi by the collar, and flung him off the building. The dead Lombardi slowly turned blue, his body shattering like clay as he hit the ground. Elena and Paco then went to a cafe to rest, but unexpectedly encountered the real Lombardi. Lombardi led them to a church, where Elena handed him the book. As soon as they opened it, all three quickly looked away. The book contained a powerful force that would blind anyone who looked directly at its contents. Using a mirror, Lombardi held it above his head, reflecting the contents of the book, and discovered it held a powerful spell. The spell could summon the Eye of God to reset the world. The text was in an ancient dialect, and Lombardi could only decipher a small portion, but he knew that to fully unlock the book, all 30 silver coins were needed. The coin's power could counteract the book's effects. But now, Pablo had collected all the coins. He was planning a mysterious ceremony soon, and Lombardi wanted them to help stop it. But just as they were leaving the church, Lombardi had a sudden sense of foreboding. A lightning bolt struck a nearby tree, and a fallen branch snapped the power line, which recoiled and electrocuted Lombardi. Vergara and Fabio were detained by the police due to suspicious activity as the officers prepared to escort them from the airport. Vergara called Elena. Elena was in the waiting area at the airport, and once he learned this, he signaled to Fabio. The two immediately attacked the airport security. Being undead, they had no fear of the officers' machine guns. Vergara walked through the hail of bullets, grabbed the gun barrel, and threw the officer across the room. In no time, they defeated everyone in their path and reunited with Elena in the lobby. Seeing Vergara again, Elena was overwhelmed with emotion, bringing tears to her eyes. Though they had much to say, now wasn't the time. Pablo's men had tracked them down. Surrounded by numerous henchmen, Vergara handed the book to Fabio, instructing him to decipher it, and sent Elena to get a car outside. After they left, Vergara stood alone, facing the hitman. Using his undead strength, Vergara held off the attackers. Meanwhile, Fabio had taken the book to the restroom, using the mirror's reflection to read its contents. A man exited a stall, and Fabio smashed his head against the mirror, then held a glass shard to the man's throat, forcing him to turn the book's pages, but the man soon showed signs of pain. Suddenly, Fabio saw a sequence of numbers on one page and committed it to memory. By then, the man's body had reached its limit, and flames erupted from within him. At the same time, Vergara had defeated the hitman, and they got into a car and sped away. Fabio recorded the numbers on his phone. Now, they had the crucial information. Only one more piece was needed to stop Pablo's plan. In the next scene, they arrived at St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican, where they met the Pope. Vergara explained their purpose to borrow the Pope's staff of the Eye of Blood, which held Jesus' blood from his suffering. Divine suffering was the strongest force in the world, capable of countering the 30 silver coins, but the Pope refused, believing God would never let his people suffer. Angered by the Pope's ignorance, Fabio used his powers. He telekinetically choked the Pope, lifting him off the ground. As Vergara took the staff, Vergara, with his decaying body, sped across the plains on a motorcycle. Suddenly, a gunshot knocked his bike over. The impact severely fractured his bones. Determined to reach his destination, Vergara reset his broken leg with a few planks, wrapped in a red cloak, and pressed on. Soon, he arrived at an altar, set down his gear, and pulled out the staff borrowed from the Pope. He reached into his own abdomen, retrieving the Eye of Blood. Once the staff was complete, Vergara played the recording on his phone. Using the numbers Fabio had recorded, he adjusted the staff's dials, and the blood of Jesus began to react. Meanwhile, in a massive secret base, Pablo and 30 others boarded a spaceship. At the press of a technician's button, the spaceship's exterior lit up, and a large hatch opened on the ground. Meanwhile, a helicopter passed over Vergara's head, carrying a massive rock below. A group of workers placed the rock in the center of the altar. Once the spaceship hovered above the rock, Pablo instructed everyone to take out their coins and close their eyes. At this moment, a spellbook was handed to him, and as he began chanting the incantation from the book, the clear sky instantly darkened. Vergara, watching from outside, stared intently as a giant eye appeared among the clouds. Vergara tried his best but ultimately couldn't stop it. A beam of energy pushed the spaceship towards the eye. The chanting man started to bleed from his nose, and moments later, his entire head exploded. Seeing they were close to entering the eye, Pablo took the spellbook and began reciting the incantation himself. His face twisted with a devilish expression, and with a heart-wrenching scream, the spaceship successfully entered the eye at the last second, and the enormous Eye of God slowly vanished from the sky. When everything calmed down, the Lord of Hell approached Vergara. The king picked up the staff and handed it to Vergara, telling him that breaking it would allow him to leave. Vergara stepped towards the rock, and when he smashed the Eye of Blood on the staff, his entire body slowly floated upward. Finally, Vergara entered a glowing portal, and when he woke up again, the sky above was a clear blue. There were no signs of destruction around him, and he returned to the old town, filled with confusion. The town was as peaceful as ever, just as he remembered. All the villagers were happy, and then a police officer from the town approached Paco. They had discovered something strange on the mountain. A spaceship had landed deep in the valley. When Vergara and the villagers reached the site, he immediately understood everything. It turned out that the Eye of God didn't lead to another world. It only sent people through a time tunnel back to the past. The so-called world reset was merely the beginning of the next cycle.